My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, to share a highlight of something that we went over here a couple of weeks ago in one of the adult study circles from a very famous work, Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin, by the great Imam Abu al-Abbas ibn Qudamah. And in this work, there's a chapter he dedicates to the routine of the righteous. We all have our routines. Some of us are pretty set in those routines. From the morning to the night, what we do at night until the next morning. And he highlighted about 15 or so different times throughout the day in which you, as a person of faith, can do certain acts of worship, devotion, or even with your intention, your job can be an act of devotion itself. And in the daytime, he breaks it down into 7 sections. And I want to draw your attention to the last. The 7th section of the routine of the righteous is when the sun is about to set. And it casts very rich yellow rays across the horizon. And from this moment until the sun sets, this was a time in which the pious of the past, they used to honor more than they honored the early mornings. They honored this time because it was the end of the day. Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, he said that you are nothing but a number of days. إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ أَيَّامٍ. Nothing but a number of days. إِذَا ذَهَبَ يَوْمٍ ذَهَبَ بَعْضُكَ. That when one of those days goes, a part of you goes with that day. And because of this concept that they were very well aware of, the importance of time, the value of their time at the end of the day, which marked the end of a phase of their life, they spent that time glorifying Allah, seeking His forgiveness, and self-examination. Not medical, but spiritual examination, to reflect over what you did during that day. And if you found yourself filling your day with righteousness and devotion, then it's a cause for you to be grateful. Thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you took advantage of the time that He gave you. And if you found the opposite, then it's an opportunity for you to seek pardon and forgiveness and resolve yourself to doing better. As we know, the good deeds, they remove the evil deeds. And so concluding your day either in a state of gratitude, if you're grateful, Allah will increase you, or in a state of repentance and resolve to do better, then going into the night, it should be a much better outcome until the morning. Now, here we are today, and of course it's not the 7th part of the day according to the Imam. However, we're getting close to the end of another year. We're getting ready to wrap up another year, and there's no better time to examine what we've done throughout the year than right now. And following after last week's topic of Thanksgiving, and no, it's not the feast, but the act of being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's important that we take some time before we start yet another year to think back and reflect on what it is that we've done, what's important in our lives, and take into account the many blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted us so that we can be grateful. The reality is, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. That if you tried to enumerate the blessings of Allah, you would be unable to do so. You would be unable to count everything it is that you have from Allah subhanahu. One of the great Imams of Tafsir, Ibn Adil al-Nu'mani, he said that it's not possible for the servant to be completely grateful. Even if they spend their entire day in righteousness, if they wear themselves out in devotion and are excessive in thanks. They excessively, if that word is appropriate in this context, excessively thank Allah. It's not possible. The servant will always come up lacking and wanting in their gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says to be totally grateful, to be completely and perfectly grateful for all the blessings. It requires that you are intimately aware of them, that you know the blessings that you have in a very intimate way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His blessings, they are so abundant, it is therefore an impossibility. It's impossible to be aware of everything that we have. Everything from the greatest to the smallest, sometimes it is lost on us. And so, due to our minds and the limited capacity, we truly cannot understand the magnitude of Allah's blessing. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concludes this verse, Inna Allah la ghafur rahim. Indeed, Allah is forgiving and merciful. Meaning that because of our limited capacity, our inability to truly be grateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will overlook that and forgive us of that fault by continuing to bestow His blessing upon us. Even if we have not given our due of gratitude, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to bless our lives, to fill them with many things. And even though we are unable to be truly grateful, it doesn't mean that we should be heedless to the fact that we're blessed. We absolutely cannot afford to be heedless to the most important of our blessings. And, of course, those which are most obvious to us. So if someone wanted to be more conscious and more grateful for the things that they enjoy and the blessings that they have, where do you start? That may be a question on your mind. Well, how can I be more grateful? What should I be grateful for first? You remember the statement of Abu Darda, talked about last week. He says, "Man lam yara anna Allah ta'ala alayhi ni'ma illa fil akl wa shurb, faqad qalla fahmu wa hadara adhabu." A person that only sees the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their food and drink has a limited understanding, and their punishment is just around the corner. Those are some of the most obvious, at least in our culture, in our context, is the material things that we have and we enjoy. So start by asking yourself, what do you consider your greatest blessing? What is the greatest blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon the faithful? We can answer that question. Well, if you think about it yourselves, you might be thinking, well, food and drink are of course great. Is it my life? Is it my health? Is it my wealth? Is it my family and my children? Is that the greatest blessing from Allah subhanahu? Is it my freedom? Which is also another blessing and security. If you look at the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and this is where I want to draw your attention today, to this great story of Abul Anbiya, known as the father of the prophets. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He gave Ibrahim wise judgment at a young age. During his early years, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he grew up in a pagan society. In fact, his father was the idol maker. He would carve the statues that would go in their temple, the temple that they would visit to worship, to pray towards, and to ask of those figurines. Some big, some small, different shapes and sizes. And Ibrahim was, as a young boy, astonished at how people took such objects to be the center of their devotion. I mean, he watched his father carve them out of wood. And as an energetic child, many of us have them in our homes, like they like to jump on the sofa and bounce off the walls. Well, Ibrahim as a child used to climb on top of those idols. And one day, he was reprimanded for doing that. His father was shocked at the disrespect that his child was showing towards their gods. Another time, Ibrahim, he saw an idol that was carved out of wood, and he looked at that idol and asked his father, "What is this idol?" And he said, "This is the God of gods." And Ibrahim said, "Well, why does he have such large ears? He has oversized ears. Imagine a human-like figure with these elephant-like ears." And his father said, "Well, that's an indication that he's so knowledgeable, like he hears everything." And Ibrahim, he laughed at that concept with these big ears. And this is how he grew up, in a community that was very much paganistic, worshipped idols. That was their way of life, their religion, and he just could not understand what it was that they were doing. And as he grew older, he continued along this line of thinking until one night, he left his home to go and find refuge in the mountains. Similar story to our Prophet ﷺ would go out of the town, a town he was dissatisfied with, a people he was worried with, and find refuge out in the calm, quiet of nature. And he walked alone in the dark until he found a cave to sit in the mountain, resting his back against the wall. He looked at the sky, and this was the sky filled with the celestial bodies that many of his community members actually worshipped. And when he looked up there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he discusses this occurrence. And he says, "We did show Ibrahim the realm of the heavens and the earth, that he would be among the certain in faith. So when the night covered him with darkness, he saw a star, Ibrahim, and he said, 'This is my Lord,' much like what his community members believed. And then what happened to the star? As it set in the night sky, it disappeared. And he said, 'I do not like those that disappear.' And then he saw the moon, the bright, shining moon, and he said, 'This is my Lord,' bigger than the star, fixed in the night sky. And then it too set. And he said, 'Unless my Lord guides me, then I will surely be among those who go astray.' And then when the moon set and the sun rose from the horizon, he did the very same thing and said, 'Well, this is my Lord,' much bigger than the moon, brighter, fixed in the day sky. And, well, as we know, the sun always sets. It goes away, drops below the horizon. And when he saw this, قال هذا ربي هذا أكبر فلما أفلت قال يا قوم إني بريء مما تشركون. When he saw that sun, he said, as it set, he said, 'This was the biggest, the greatest.' And then when it set, he said, 'I am free from my people and what they ascribe as partners with Allah. إني وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين.' I have turned my face to the one who has created the heavens and the earth, upright and straight, and I am not from the polytheists." This story was the defining moment of Ibrahim's life. This decision here at the end, this is in Surah Al-An'am, verses 74 to 79. You can find that story, as I mentioned. This story here, right at the end, his decision to turn to Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the creator of that star, of that moon, of that sun, of those celestial bodies, to take as his Lord. This was a decision that led to a series of very, very difficult events. And it ended up with him being thrown into a blazing fire. Now, of course, Ibrahim was saved, but he faced many challenges along the way. The underlying factor of this story is something that each and every one of us sitting here today must be eternally grateful for. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضاه ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So hopefully you've figured it out. The greatest blessing that Allah has bestowed upon the faithful, looking at the story of Ibrahim and everything he went through. Imam al-Safarini, rahimahullah, great Imam of the past, he quotes from one of the last investigative scholars of that era, one of the greats, Sheikh Uthman ibn Ahmad al-Najdi. And he said, the first of Allah's faith-based blessings upon the servant is granting him or her the ability to know Allah. This is the first. This is the greatest blessing that Allah Azza wa Jalla has bestowed upon us as His servants, giving us the ability to get to know Him. And while Ibrahim alayhi salam was raised in a pagan society, in a society that associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worshipped statues and figurines, even being brought up in the house of an idol maker, he did not allow that to be the cause of him squandering this great blessing. But he set out on a journey to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is that journey? The journey of Ibrahim, and it can be the journey of each and every one of us sitting in here today. How do we get to know Allah Azza wa Jal? The great Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls His servants in the Quran to get to know Him in two ways. The Quran, the speech of Allah, is inviting us to get to know Allah in two ways. The first of those ways is to examine the world around you. Much like what Ibrahim did. When, as a boy, he saw the idols being carved by the hand of his own father, how could they be divine? How could they be special? How could they be powerful? He climbed onto their backs. They could not defend themselves. He noted that they did not eat, they did not drink, they did not sleep, they could not pick themselves up, they did not talk. Lifeless, helpless. By looking at those things, and then later as he grew, he began to look the world around him, the marvel of the creation, the stars, the moon, the sun, and with a little reflection, a little thought, a little effort, he came to the conclusion that there must be something higher, something greater, the creator of all those things. This is the first path. This is the first way, the first journey to getting to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second is to think and to ponder over the ayat of the Quran. See, unlike Ibrahim, we've been given revelation. Ibrahim, in the beginning years of his life, he had to use al-ayat al-kawniyah, the various signs of Allah in creation, as a young boy. Now we have at our disposal both a marvelous world of creation around us to ponder and reflect over, and we have the ayat that help us along the way to understand it all and put it into perspective. And that's how we can get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he looked, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَنَظَرَ نَظْرَةٍ فِي النُّجُومِ. He looked and examined the stars. There are multiple ways to explain this verse. However, Ibn Adil al-Nu'mani, in a number of those ways, he says that the interpretation of this verse, it has to do with that story of Ibrahim glancing up at the night sky and seeing the stars, examining their reality and their existence. And in a similar way, as Ibrahim looked and examined, we too have been commanded to do the same thing, to examine and to ponder the world around us. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ انظُرُوا مَاذَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Say, look and examine what is in the heavens and the earth. Why do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to examine such things? Why are we commanded to look? And there's multiple ayat. Some of them are very general, like this one. Some of them are very specific. Look at your food. Look how you were created. Look at the camel. Look at the mountain. Look at the sky, etc. And the list goes on and on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the same word, unzuru. Look, examine, and ponder. Why is He doing that? For us to take a look at the world around us. Well, it's not to fill our Facebook feed and our Snapchat stories with beautiful scenery. That's not the objective. That may be one of the benefits, to take these great pictures, these selfies with you and something amazing behind you of Allah's creation, but that's not the point of it all. The point of it is so that we can get to know Allah, so that we can get to know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, Allahu alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawati wa min al-ardi mithlahun yatanazzalu al-amru baynahunna lita'lamu anna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir wa anna Allah qad ahata bi kulli shay'in ilma. It is Allah who has created 7 heavens and of the earth, the like of them. He created everything. His command descends among them so that you may know that Allah is over all things competent, and that Allah has encompassed all things in knowledge. He created everything, the heavens and the earth and all that resides within it, so that you could know who your Lord is. Being that our ability to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the first and the greatest blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's also our first obligation to get to know Allah. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. As Allah says, know that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. Surah Muhammad, verse number 19. So take a minute right here, today, right now, and think about this gift. The gift that you've been given. The ability to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask yourself how you've taken advantage of it over the last 11 months of this year. Are you more familiar with Allah today than you were at the beginning of the year? Have you employed your hearing, your sight, and your intellect to answer Allah's call, to read, to ponder, to reflect, and to examine the world around you? إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, or the intellect, if you will, all of these will be questioned. You've been given something, has to be used. If the answer is yes, if you say, well, if I think about it, from the beginning of the year, I have learned more of Allah. I am more acquainted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that can be seen in my devotion, in my love, in my reverence, in my honor, in my duty to Him. Yes, I have. Then thank Allah. Be grateful to Him, and He will increase you in that. And by doing so, He will increase your faith. And if it's not the case, and you say to yourself, well, you know, I'm no better off in that regard than I was at the beginning of the year. I don't know much more about Allah than I did at the beginning of this year. Well, the opportunity is in front of you to seek Allah's pardon and forgiveness. Astaghfirullah. And then to resolve yourself to doing better in the coming days, weeks, months, and years of your lives. You have to keep in mind always, as the Prophet ﷺ, he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبَّ أَن يَرَى أَثَرَ نِعْمَتِهِ عَلَى عِبَادِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see the sign of His blessing on his servants. So let that blessing, the greatest blessing that you have, be made manifest in your actions by pursuing either one or both of these paths to getting to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by way of reflecting on the world around you or looking at and examining the verses found in his book. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our hearts and guide us to that which he loves and is pleased with. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.